Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We had left off on Kitab al-Buyu', chapter of buying and selling. Inshallah, today we're starting with a new chapter. And this is called Babul Hajr. Hajr, the Ha, Jim, and Ra. So Hajr is where there's certain groups of people who, because they are unfit to spend their wealth, they need their representative or they need somebody to spend on their behalf. Okay? And generally, you find that this is one of three categories of people. And this is taken from the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثَةٍ, which means that the pen, i.e., the pen that records good and bad deeds, the pen of taklif, has been raised, i.e., it doesn't apply to three types of people. رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثَةٍ. One of them he mentions is al-majnunu hatta yufiq. So a person who is insane or has lost their mind, mentally unwell. So in that moment of instability or madness, at times it may be temporary and at times it may be permanent. May Allah protect and cure one and all. So in that moment of madness, he says that the pen of taklif, i.e., the person won't be sinful if they are to read salah, for example, or not read salah, etc. And in the same breath, because they are mentally not fit to use their wealth, in this chapter of Buyu', we say that they are one of the three categories of people who, obviously there's detail, but they cannot spend or use their wealth by themselves. If they are unfit to, somebody will be appointed on their behalf. And that would mean that if you, as a normal person, had to interact or transact with these people, we'll get into the detail. Is your transaction correct or not? So that's the first one. Second one is الصبي حتى يبلغ. Sabi is a child, basically a young girl or young boy who has not reached the age of maturity. So before this age of maturity, there's no good or bad deeds against them. In fact, what we would say is for a child, the good deeds are recorded for them. And if there's any bad deeds between them and Allah, then obviously it's not recorded because there's no taklif. And similarly, when it comes to them buying and selling, so let's say a child inherited a building, his father died while he was young. The wasi or wali, meaning the person who's appointed to look after them, they will be in charge of that wealth and a guardian over that wealth until they reach the age of maturity and understanding. Okay. The third one, which doesn't apply today, is a slave who has not been freed. So a slave, as you know, they didn't own anything in those days. So, for example, if somebody had a slave and the slave came to sell the house, for example, because they don't own that house, that transaction would not be correct unless they were appointed by the owner. Okay, we won't touch on that because it's not applicable. However, you found or you find this in the same hadith. Now, it's important to differentiate between two things here. There's what we call a reward slash punishment with Allah. Okay, so if a youngster, meaning somebody who's not reached the age of maturity, or somebody who's mad, didn't read their salah, didn't fast, whatever it may be, they're not held accountable in the sight of Allah, meaning reward and punishment. However, if they had to cause some sort of damage, okay, let's differentiate between the two, i.e., you find a mad person had to take a rock and break somebody's car. Here, this person cannot say that, oh, because they're mad and there's no reward or punishment, we don't have to pay for the window. No. Here, when it comes to property, they are all liable, all these three. And if they don't have the wealth to pay, if they have wealth the person who is appointed to look after their wealth can take it from it in order to pay. And if they don't have this person who's looking after the child, for example, the father, etc., so you go to a supermarket and the child is by one of the counters, one of the shelves, and they break a glass. Here, the father will have to pay if it's required. So differentiate between these two. Then, when it comes to our chapter here, we're talking about buying and selling. One of the positions of the scholars also found in the Hanafi madhab is if this mad person had to go and transact, or this child had to go and transact. Here we will say, let's say you went to buy the car from them. Here we will say that the transaction that you did in order to buy this, we will only approve it if it's approved by the person who is looking over their wealth. Why are these people not allowed to transact generally? Because a mad person can be cheated easily. He's not in his right frame of mind. Similarly, when it comes to a young child, they don't know more often than not the prices, especially of bigger assets, etc. So that's why they say that you would have to wait for the wali. Some scholars have made the exception when it comes to younger children who are a little bit of understanding, and you give them a little bit to go and buy groceries, for example, or you're trying to train them how to use wealth, etc. Those small transactions would be permissible and allowed. Okay, we touched on them being liable for what they damage. Then, when it comes to zakah, so at times you might find a person may have had or may have a lot of wealth, and eventually they become ill, they become unwell mentally, or a child inherits a lot of wealth. Here we'll say that zakah must be taken from their wealth. Okay, the person who's in charge of looking over their wealth will take out the zakah. Okay, so zakah on the wealth. There is some debate when it comes to this, but the safest is to take out zakah from their wealth. And then when it comes to nafaqah, so these are all chapters that are going to come in detail, but this is the gist of it. Nafaqah is spending, where there's certain people who it's compulsory upon them to spend on themselves, on their families, etc. Now, if this person is unfit to spend, they don't have mental capacity, then here we'll say that the person who's in charge of their wealth, let's say, give you a typical example. Let's say there is a father and his son, father and son. Let's say the father is now, the father was very, very wealthy, and the son not so much. No, in fact, let's say, sorry. Let's say the father had wealth and the son also had wealth. And this father needed certain treatment, for example. Here, uh, this wealth or this treatment can be paid if the son doesn't have the means to pay. He can pay from the father's wealth itself. It can be taken. There's no problem with that. And similarly, when it comes to, let's say the father had responsibility. So he had to look after his wife and he had to look after uh, his children. And he had a brother. The brother was looking after his wealth. The brother doesn't have to take from his own wealth in order to spend on these people. He can take bil ma'ruf, not more, not less. What's fair? Can take from the father's wealth and it's spent on these people. Similarly, a child, even when it comes to an orphan, you find there are those orphans who've inherited a lot of wealth. Allah says that if you don't have, meaning you yourself who's looking after the orphan, you poor, or it's difficult for you, it's not easy for you to spend on them, and this orphan has wealth, then you spend on them from their wealth, and He says you can eat, meaning your expenses and what you need in order to carry out this job from their wealth also. Bil ma'ruf. Bil ma'ruf meaning with what is fair. So this is just an overview on these three categories of people. Then a fourth category of person will come. However, if you notice, this person is to do with their mental well-being. And then we're going to get to our chapter. There's certain people who, by law, especially if they become bankrupt, they may be restricted from transacting. And inshallah, that will come, falls under Babul Hajar. So that's with Babul Hajar. Moving on to Bulugh al-Maram. We had stopped at the hadith where hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, where he says the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, طهور إناء أحدكم إذا ولغ فيه الكلب أن يغسله 7 مرات. He says that if a dog had to drink from your vessel or container, it either had to drink from it or it had to put its tongue into it. The way to purify is to wash it 7 times. Okay, there's a lot of masail in this hadith. I'll go through the main ones. So there's, when you got a hadith, sometimes you have different narrations of the hadith. So what they call different riwayat. And these riwayat, at times they may have more information or information that's not in the other. So when you look in Bulugh al-Maram, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he gives you the first riwayah. He says, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, if a dog had to drink from the vessel or the pan or the pot, or it had to put its tongue in it, إذا ولغ فيه الكلب, says, أن يغسله 7 مرات. A person should wash it 7 times. And then, same hadith, he says, أولاهن بالتراب. The first wash should be with dirt or soil. Okay? أولاهن بالتراب. It says, أخرجه مسلم. Then, in another riwayah, it says, فليرقه, which means that they should take out or throw out whatever is in the vessel. And the third riwayah, Ibn Hajar tells you, it says, وَعَفِّرُوهُ الثَّامِنَةَ بِالتُّرَابِ. Now, all these riwayat, what's Ibn Hajar trying to tell you? In the previous ahadith, he told you about water. He told you about what's considered a lot of water and a little water. Then he spoke about husband and wife. Are they allowed to bath together or not? Then he brings this hadith. This hadith is to show you a lot of masail. Number one is, according to a majority of scholars, they say that the fact that this dog, by it licking the water, it makes it dirty, it shows you that the dog is najis. So we're first talking about a dog. Is a dog considered najis, impure or not? Majority opinion is that a dog is najis and impure. And what shows it's najis and impure, or one of the things that show it's najis and impure, is this hadith. The fact that if it had to drink from the drinking vessel or from a pot or a pan, you can't use it until you wash it 7 times, which shows that its najasa and impurity is great. Second opinion, which is in the Maliki school, is the dog is not najis. And the way they respond to this hadith, they say this is amr ta'abbudi. Ta'abbudi means Allah ordered us to do it and we don't know the reason. Okay? And the reason, and their evidence is Allah allowed you to hunt with the dogs which are trained. Okay? They say that the way the dog hunts is it goes and it catches the prey. So if this dog was najis and it's going to hunt for you on your behalf and it's going to kill on your behalf, it wouldn't be allowed if it's najis. And then they have a back and forth and a debate. But the majority opinion is, number one, when it comes to dogs, the saliva is najis. Right. And we said the Maliki madhab are telling you this is amr التعبدي. Thereafter, the majority school, they tell you, is it only the saliva or is it all parts of the dog? So, for example, let's say a dog came to you and it had to lick you, or it started sweating, or it had to touch you, etc. Here, you've got, again, they themselves differ on two opinions. First, tell you that anything to do with a dog is najis, najasa, mughallada. Second opinion is that it's only to do with the saliva, and we're sticking to this hadith. Okay, so that's to do with the dog. Number two, when it comes to cleansing this vessel that the dog drank from, the Messenger ﷺ says, "Tuhuru ina'i ahadikum," is speaking about your own plate or your own bowl or your own cup if the dog had to drink from it. And this would be different if, for example, let's say you have a hunting dog and it has its own plate or its own bowl, and it's the only thing that it's only the dog that drinks from it. That's separate. You don't have to carry on washing it. However, he says that if it had to lick one of your utensils, you have to wash it. And then he says 7 times. 7 times. Now, some of the scholars tell you that this 7, the number is meant, i.e., not less than 7. Anything less than 7, it won't be clean. Others tell you this is to show that it needs to be washed thoroughly. If we stick to this first opinion where we say 7 is 7, then the hadith carries on. It says, "Ulahunna bit-turab." From these washes, the 7, you can make the first one, wash it with soil or clay or anything from the earth, i.e., dirt that's from the earth. Here we'll say soil. Wallahu alam, there's some people who mention, I haven't done my own research on it, but they say that modern science shows that there's certain bacteria on a dog which can only be removed by washing it with the soil. So if you put the soil in and then wash with the water. But wallahu alam. And then Ibn Hajar gave you another riwayah of the hadith. He says, فَلْيُرِقْهُ. Here he's saying that in one of the narrations of this hadith, the Messenger ﷺ said that this water, let's say that you had a bowl like this and the dog drank from it. He says that the water in it, before you start washing, you must throw it out. Okay? So they give you the reason. They say the reason why he said you must throw it out is because this water has become najis. This water has become najis. Okay? And then you've got a riwayah that Ibn Hajar also tells you. He says, وَعَفِّرُوهُ الثَّامِنَةَ بِالتُّرَابِ. Some of the narrations of the hadith, it says that wash this utensil or this bowl 7 times, and the 8th time wash it with dirt or soil. Now, the scholars, those who said you must wash it so many times, they differ as to, is it 7 times that need to be washed or 8? Okay? Because one hadith says 7, the other said 8. First opinion is that we will stick to the opinion that tells you to wash more times, i.e., we'll wash 7 times with dirt and once with 7 times with water and 1 time with dirt, which will be a total of 8. That is one opinion. Second opinion is no, it will remain on 7 because this is the most popular riwayah and the most popular narration. So we remain on 7. And the reason why they made 8 or they used the word 8 was just to differentiate between the water or using the water and using the soil. And they say that it's a method that the Arabs used to use in their speech to show you that this is different from that. So again, to recap, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah gives you this hadith to show you that when you've got water, if a dog had to lick this water becomes najis, number 1. You're not allowed to make wudu from it, number 2. Number 3 is if it's your utensil, there's a special method to clean it. Number 4 is you can either put it the first time or the meaning you put you put uh, the dirt or the soil, you put it the first time, or you can put it on the eighth time. And some say any one of the washes you use soil. Last mas'ala when it comes to this is, what about other animals which are najis? Do you have to wash 7 times also or not? So, for example, a pig, and a lot of the scholars are of the opinion that this washing 7 times is only for a dog. As for a pig or any other najasa, you'll say you wash it until you know that it's clean. So, for example, let's say you had a pig urine, or a pig had to lick a person's clothing. Here they'll tell you wash it until it's clean, and not necessarily 7 times. Inshallah, we'll stop there. And then on Monday, we'll finish, or we'll carry on with Babul Hajar, as well as the next hadith. The next hadith, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah is speaking about if a cat had to drink from the water. And then they mention some differentiations or some differences between a dog and a cat. And inshallah,